What will you do to unlock innovation? In today's fast-paced world, innovation might not be enough. Tomorrow's pioneers of change will need to be agile, able to adapt, and committed like never before. Your host, Sana Vinding, invites you to listen in and join business leaders from around the world as they share their visions for success in our future business challenges.
Welcome to Mind Innovation. I'm your host, Sana Vinding, and I'm always excited to learn. And in today's podcast, we're going to talk about problem solving and how it's an investment in knowledge. I want to welcome Jamie Flinchbaugh. He's an accomplished entrepreneur, senior executive consulting, and an author with more than 30 years of learning oriented experience spanning in a range of roles across diverse industries and functions. And the latest book is called People Solve Problems, The Power of Every Person, Every Day, Every Problem. So welcome, Jamie. I'm looking forward to our conversation today because, talking about problem solving, oh my God, I want to learn more, and all the the listeners, well, they should learn more about the book, learn more about you. So welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I enjoyed the podcast. I love talking about innovation and its intersection with all of this stuff. So love what you're doing, and glad to be here today.
Awesome. So why did you write the book? Let's talk about that.
Well, so it's been 15 years or more since my last book, and so there's part of me that knew I needed to get to writing again. But this particular book really came about as I watched people struggle to get better at problem solving, and in many cases look at the wrong places. Look at the wrong places in themselves and their organization. And not that tools are bad, I want to be very clear about that, but that they kept going to, which tool, and more training and more tools and more templates, and let's standardize it and automate it. And it's just, those weren't the things that were holding them back. And spent a lot of time coaching over the years. And so anytime I write, I kind of write for myself first. It helps me sharpen my viewpoint by forcing myself to articulate something, hopefully in a clear way.
Yeah.
So kind of why I wanted to write this is to really hone in on what I thought and what I would coach and teach others in the future by going through the discipline process of writing.
Yeah. So what are some of the importance that you need, the skill set around having problem solving? And I know it's a loaded question because there's so much, but we need to start somewhere. So what is the most important one that you will highlight?
Well, I think the most important one is just framing the problem that you're dealing with, right? People call it the problem statement, and almost every problem solving tool has a section where we frame the problem. Yeah. But properly framing the problem, even if it's just an everyday conversation, helps make sure that we're everything that we do after that is based on that framing. Yeah. And so, what are we trying to overcome? What are we trying to change? What gap are we trying to close? So, I recently in my I only write a newsletter 6 times a year, but in my January episode, I wrote about employee engagement, but a big part of it was sort of the Great Resignation, right, which gets lots of attention. Yeah. But a lot of people don't frame that problem very well. So almost every company I work with is talking about it, but I can't hire people. Well, that's one problem. We're losing people. Well, losing people to competitors is one thing. Losing people to leaving the workforce is a different problem. Yeah. And so on and so forth, right? Lots of ways we can break it down, but just they're stumbling around looking for solutions because they didn't even start by framing the problem. And that I think is, one of the most comprehensive skills that's underappreciated.
Yeah, I think you also addressed in your book, you're saying, don't be that single person, right? Solving the problem. You're not getting the medal for being that one person. Be that team. And I love your illustrations in the book as well, because it actually shows as well that bringing that team together and work in collaboration and defining that problem solving would actually get you there.
Yeah, and I think if nothing else, I'll
Yeah.
say that, let me set the low bar, is that having a thought partner, right? Even just someone to listen to you think out loud,
Yeah.
um, is helpful, because it just adds a little bit more curiosity and rigor and deliberateness, just to have, somebody to talk to about it. And
Yeah.
and so I find that to me, that's the low bar. No problem should be just one person.
Yeah.
And so whether it's a thought partner, whether it's a true collaborator, whether it's a coach, whatever it is, it's a, I like to call it a contact team sport. Um, it's not just a team sport; it's a contact team sport.
Yeah.
We've got to battle it up, make each other better in the process of problem solving.
Yeah. That's a new discipline for the Olympic. No. Um, so wouldn't it also help? Because what I see, and I've been in different organizations, is there's like us and them. Suddenly, you have silos, or you get teams split in, maybe not on purpose, but it's there. So by bringing and be together and defining that problem, it's eliminating. I believe, I want to hear from you, more, in a more healthy way, that is not going to be us and them.
Yeah, so an awful lot of organizations I've worked with, their biggest problem isn't the market or the customers or regulation. It's themselves, right? They
Yeah.
get in their own way, and you know, uh, in processes, cutting across boundaries, and we like to think org design solves that, but for every org design solution, it creates new problems anyway. So
Yeah.
when you pull people together and they truly uh, don't just dump solutions on each other, but they come together across organizational boundaries. And I don't care if you write it on a piece of paper, write it on a whiteboard, write it on a digital whiteboard like Miro. As soon as you sort of have two people that used to be battling with each other,
Yeah.
now they're facing the problem. Now the problem is the enemy, and we're on the same team.
Yeah.
And it's a small but also massive psychological shift, in
Yeah.
that we're not each other's enemy. We're on the same team trying to get the job done. That problem is the enemy. Let's together find a way through it.
Yeah. Yeah. And doesn't that touch, like, because you learn through your experience as well when you're in it. And then the experience will also hopefully touch how you behave. So if it was a good experience, and you reflect on it, that can take you these small steps to be that learning organization or that problem solving organization.
Yeah, I'll go back way back in my early journey. Is I remember anytime I'd say facilitate a team, and I don't really do that anymore, but we'd be in a room with a bunch of post-its, putting them up on a wall, looking at a process, and there's 3 functions or there's 10 functions, and almost every single time people have these ahas, like, oh, I'm making your life harder. I wasn't intending to do that. Oh, that's why you need what you need. I
Yeah.
didn't know that. And so when you have enough of those experiences, you start to realize maybe everybody else in the company isn't stupid. Maybe everybody else in the company isn't working against me. Maybe it's just some bad processes getting in the way, some misalignment, miscommunication, all these other
Yeah.
things. And if we fix them, we all end up better. It's not really a zero-sum game. This department's going to win, that department's going to lose. We actually both win if we solve those problems.
Yeah. No, definitely. What about conflict in brainstorming? Is that good or bad? Is that something you need? How do you look at this?
I think you need it, and so I think it's good. I think it's you don't just bring in conflict for the sake of conflict. It has to be managed. It has to be channeled, but conflict is how we break through barriers. And the whole idea is, if we're stuck with a problem, if we don't know the answer, we have to have some kind of a breakthrough. It doesn't mean we have to have a brand new original answer that nobody in the world has ever had before, but we still need to break loose of an old assumption, or break through a perceived limitation. And so unless we have a little tension, a little conflict that challenges each other to think harder, and again, break out of how we're stuck,
Yeah.
then those breakthroughs are so much harder. And so I believe good problem solving should invite conflict. Again, not disruptive conflict, not people being jerks just for the sake of being jerks, but let's challenge each other and then make each other's thinking better.
Yeah.
I think it's an absolutely essential element of problem
Yeah.
solving.
Yeah. So be better together, right?
Be better.
Yeah. So you're saying it's like the zone as well, because you're also in your book saying, and how do you learn, right? You have your comfort zone, you have your learning zone, and then you have your fear zone. So can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah. So the idea is, so first, all problem solving is really a learning activity, right? If we already knew what we needed to know,
Yeah.
just go do it, right? Just go do the thing. It's a task.
Yeah.
So by definition, you have to be in a learning mindset. When we're in our comfort zone, that's the stuff we already know, right? We already know that we're in our comfort zone. We can operate on, we know how to brush our teeth. We don't need to think about it a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things we can do in our comfort zone. We have to stretch outside of that to get into a learning zone, but you go too far outside your learning zone and it gets scary. Right?
Yeah.
I'm reading a biography right now about the Wright brothers and the sort of birth of manned flight.
Yeah.
And they were very careful. They were kind of like, we don't want to die in our glider because we know this is going to take a long time to solve. So it wasn't even about their own preservation of life. It was kind of about the mission. So they were very thoughtful about how to not make it too scary, right?
Yeah.
How do they go in increments so that it's not so scary? So we have to provide safety and psychological, professional, physical safety so that getting outside our comfort zone isn't so scary. And there's a lot of companies that don't, from a cultural standpoint, if you even say the wrong word, everybody looks at you funny. You're going to get ostracized, you're going to get ignored, and it gets scary very fast. And in those organizations, there's just no room for learning, no room for good collaborative problem solving.
Yeah. So how it's growing, right? Because the comfort zone, of course, the more you learn, that comfort zone will get bigger, and your learning zone will also stretch out. So is it an awareness that when you are learning and you're exploring and learning, everything is just you're getting a bigger and bigger, and how you have it in the book is you have an illustration of circles.
Yeah, and I'll say the other aspect of that is continually trying to shrink the comfort zone. And so yes, the number of things that we know might grow, but what do we do with it, right? Do we become more ambitious? Do we go after new journeys or new challenges?
Yeah.
It doesn't always have to be about a job change. It could just be about working on the next problem, the next breakthrough, the next strategy. That very quickly makes you uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so a lot of it is trying to stay out of the comfort zone. I would every year I set learning goals for myself, and a lot of it was to keep my comfort zone smaller. I'd go into new domains or new skills and explore it with a true beginner's mindset, because some of it was just practicing getting myself out of the comfort zone. Because sometimes I'm doing what I do, I'm doing what I know, I'm doing what I love, and then you become too comfortable. That's not to eat that too much. And so always very deliberately force myself to get out of the comfort zone. So that's either something we can do for ourselves or something leaders have to do for their teams.
Yeah.
Keep that comfort zone, that tension in the system, so that we continue to challenge ourselves.
Yeah. I like that, because every time, not every day, but when I actually hire into my team, I always ask before they're hired, right? I ask, what skill set was the last one you learned, and tell me more about it. And what is the new skill set that you really want to learn? And that actually gives you a really good insight of how this person is looking at it, and looking at themselves, of saying, oh, I know I have a gap here and I will want to be better here. So that's just, I love my 2 questions. So.
No, and I'll share a hiring example from my own perspective. I also like to flip that.
Yeah.
And essentially it's looking for what they are going to teach me.
Yeah.
Right. So I want a new hire to shrink my comfort zone.
Yeah.
Because they might learn from me, and they might be very good at that, and that's a key aspect. But then I also want them to teach me and challenge me. And if they're
Yeah.
just going to agree with me all the time and do what I coach them to do, then I'm not getting
No, you're not going anywhere.
end of the bargain out of that hire.
Yeah. No, you're hiring because you have a gap. I hope so. But
Yep.
what about, you also in your book talk about learner and to be a learner and to be a knower, if I could say that. And you also said that the learner is actually both. Can you explain, what is a learner and what is a knower?
Yeah. So this is probably a way in which my thinking has evolved over the years. And I used to look at, those people are knowers, and they just assume they know the answer, and they just go forward and implement sort of blindly.
Yeah.
And then learners are always curious and open. But the more I look at that, the more I look at that premise is that no person is all one or all the other.
No.
And so, if someone woke up and said, let me examine a new way to get dressed today, or brush my teeth, or, I'm going to find a new route to drive to work today, every single day, you just get lost and you'd be noon before you even got any work done. So it's more about the moment, the decision, the challenge in front of you. I have a decision to make. Am I going to approach that as a knower or a learner?
Yeah.
I have a problem to solve. I'm going to approach that as a knower or a learner. A strategy to develop, a knower or a learner. So, if I have rules about, how far my gas gauge on my car has to go down before I go to the fuel station to fill it up. And part of it is so that I don't have to think about it. I don't want to have to let me analyze the last, quarter tank and try to optimize it. No. If it's anywhere close to a quarter tank and I'm passing a gas station, go ahead and fill it up.
Yeah.
Now I don't have to be a learner about how much gas I have. I just knower, set that, forget that, brush your teeth, get dressed, all those other things. So I think it's also not about how many times you make a knower decision versus a learner decision, how well you make those decisions. So if you go all the way through a week and say, well, no, here's the moment. Here it is on a Wednesday afternoon. And this is the moment where I have to be super curious. Everything else I could do was just, this is the answer, this is the answer, this is the answer, this is the answer. But this moment on Wednesday afternoon, that's the goal. That's the moment where I want to be a learner. So it's about making good decisions about when to approach whatever's in front of you with curiosity and pursuit of knowledge and pursuit of insight versus automation and execution and assumptions. And making good decisions differentiates the knower moment or from the learner moment, and that's a key decision that we face every single day.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It also touched a little bit of ownership, because you could see a challenge or a problem that you should go into, but in some organizations, maybe you don't have that culture, right? To saying, oh, if I see it, then I own this problem. So how do you go about the culture of this ownership? And I'm sure it's touching as well transparency, the vulnerability, and the trust that you have. It's the whole culture. So,
yeah, the trust matters a lot. That's sort of an underlying ingredient for a lot of this stuff. But I don't spend too much time on trust, only in the sense that you can't just wait for trust to happen and then you go do these things.
No,
you have to do these things in order to build the trust. But ownership is a key part of that. And I've been in organizations. I remember one organization I was doing a lot of interviews, meeting a lot of key people, trying to get a sense of the culture and the environment and the problems. And everyone was willing to point out the biggest problem or what should be fixed. And they'd always say someone should fix that. Someone should fix that. And it got to the point, just for my own amusement, I actually went to their HR, people system and searched for somebody, and they don't work there. And that became a bit of my speech, if you will. But and so it's really easy to kind of go, that someone should fix that. The CEO should fix that. the business general manager should fix that, and my boss should fix that, and that other team should fix that. But if you see a problem and, at least take some ownership. The ownership doesn't have to mean that you have to resolve it, right? Ownership has to mean that you're going to do something with it.
Yeah.
You're not going to step over the piece of trash and go, oh yeah, I guess we do a bad job cleaning up around here. You pick it up and you get rid of it.
Yeah.
If you step over a piece of trash every single day, you might elevate that and share that with somebody who can do something about it. So you can pass ownership from one person to the next. You can elevate things, you can escalate things, you can share them with others, you can coach them, mentor them, delegate them, do lots of things. But ownership is about taking the next step, not just seeing a problem and looking back and admiring the problem, right?
Yeah.
And just hoping somebody comes along. And there's a lot of problems that organizations struggle with. Time meeting times, right? I tend to have 15-minute meetings. Everybody I meet with is like, well, this is great. We should do this in our company. Okay, well, what's stopping you? Nobody owns standard meeting times.
No.
That's not anybody's job descriptions. Email etiquette. Nobody has that in their job description. And so what are you going to do about it? What can you do about it? You're going to take any ownership over the problem or just sit back and admire it?
Yeah, no, you're right. We talked about, or you mentioned a little bit earlier about, there's tools, right? So that's just it's one part. So what kind of tools, because they do help you. So which one will you recommend is the ones, you're saying, hey, this is not the best one, but I'm sure you have like a prioritization saying, hey, these are the good ones.
Yeah. And I do have a chapter in my book where I kind of outline some good aspects of a whole bunch of different tools. And so I'm going to answer that two ways. My favorite's always been A3 problem solving, mostly because it really sort of captures the thinking behind what you've done, how your thinking evolves, and it makes it easy to coach and re-examine and learn and iterate. It's also very flexible from a structural standpoint. And so you can use it for a strategic problem, a business model problem, a execution problem, a tiny little tactical problem. It's very flexible in terms of how you can utilize it.
Yeah.
And I'll say the first draft of my book, I actually had A3 problem solving woven throughout, and not so much in a deliberate way. It's just like, oh, I want to talk about a tool. Let me talk about A3s because that's what I know. That's what I like to teach.
Yeah.
And so the second, and then the final draft doesn't do that. It's not like, hey, there's no tool. It's really tool agnostic, and for two reasons. One is I've seen really good problem solvers that use any one of the tools that I outline, and so great, that works for them, that works for them, that works for them, and that's fantastic. Don't give that up. The other thing is that I believe someone's tool set should evolve with their own learning. And so maybe you don't start from zero, maybe you don't start with a blank sheet of paper, maybe you pick up 8D or Trees or Kettner Trago or one of them, or A3, and you start from there. I believe you evolve your own practice and your own tools, both as you learn, incorporate those lessons into the tools and practices, as well as to close gaps. Like, you know what, we really struggle with this aspect. Why don't we sort of double click and expand that part of our problem solving tools to help people through it?
Yeah.
So I really believe in the build it yourself. Again, you might not start from zero, but build it yourself tool set, make it your own, make it work for you.
Yeah. No, yeah. Looking more into the future, if you have, we're talking to leaders, right? Because leaders are listening to this podcast. So what kind of skills or what will help them to, if you look into saying 5 to 10 years ahead of time, what should they learn now?
Well, boy, there's so many, right? So I would say the first way to answer that is, what's your gap? And then be long-term about that. But as we look at the role of the leader on this, it's, it's how they frame problems for their teams to go solve them. It's how they build or architect the system that the team operates in. It's how they coach and develop their team as problem solvers. But I'd say I'll say there's two things that I think set up the long-term journey for a leader. One is learning to solve the problems that you own and not your team's problems. And the reason that's valuable is, one, your team automatically gets to grow and develop because they own more problems, instead of you going, hey, these ones are important to me and they're big, so I better take them on myself because I'm better than you. The team owns them and they get to grow from them. The other part of that is that by sort of stepping back and letting the team own their problems, you get to see what their collective problems are, what the patterns are, the systemic problems.
Yeah.
And now you get better at problem discovery, and you free up capacity for yourself because you're not jumping into every single problem that happens.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think is really good for leaders to start on early is coaching. And I'll say one of the more common questions I get is, well, shouldn't we master problem solving before we start to coach? And my argument is no. Don't wait till you've mastered it. First, I don't even know what mastery of problem solving looks like. I've been pursuing that for 30 years, and
you're still on that journey.
Yeah, I'm getting closer, but lots to learn and struggle with.
Yeah.
So don't wait, because I don't know what that finish line looks like. But the other really valuable aspect is that when you're coaching, you're fully focused on the process. When you own a problem, the process is really just what you have to get through to get to an outcome. You still care about the outcome more than you care about the process, and you kind of really should, because that's why you're doing it. So your attention span is a little distracted. You're in learning mode about the problem, less so about the problem solving process. But when you're a coach, you're fully curious about the process that person you're coaching is going through. And I believe that the learning rate, the pace of learning, is even faster for the coach than the coachee.
Yeah.
And so I believe if leaders try to take a step back, focus more on coaching problem solving, they'll learn at an incredible pace, and of course get better at problem solving themselves, as well as being a better leader.
Agree. So my last question, and you have a lot of years experience. So if you're looking at yourself and you should give yourself an advice like 20 years ago, what would you tell yourself?
Well, I think if I go back 20 years ago, I'd probably, my advice would be, what could go wrong? And what I mean by that is that it's really easy to hesitate to make decisions, whether it's about a career change or taking on a new piece of work, or just having a conversation that sounds difficult, like whatever that might be, or putting yourself out there, or giving a speech, or writing a book, right? It's like, well, we hesitate, right? And we hesitate out of fear. We hesitate out of lack of confidence, or distraction, or again, what could go wrong? And the answer to the what could go wrong is very little. And certainly very little that isn't recoverable.
Yeah.
Right? So you took a job and it didn't work. Well, okay, take a different job and then build from there. So you lost a year. It's a long road.
Yeah.
There's very little that could go wrong that you can't recover from. And focusing on what can go wrong, and I'm not saying, we're just blind to it, but over-focusing on what could go wrong holds a lot of us back from our best days, our best decisions, our best learnings, our best whatever, our best career, our best us. And so I think, as I look back on all the things that did go wrong and actually, turned out better because that happened. Yeah. Not just that I learned from it, right? It's just unexpected upsides. I'm amazed at how things have turned out in a very good way for me, and I'm very appreciative of all of that. that's the thing, is that, very few things go so wrong that we can't recover from them. So don't fixate on that. Don't let that hold people back. Go forward, be your best self.
Yeah. Okay. If somebody wants to reach out to you, where can they find you?
Well, jflinch.com is my website. Got stuff on the book there. I've got my blog, and of course, way to contact me. And then, also LinkedIn. It's I'm pretty sure I'm still the only Jamie Flinchbaugh on there. It's not a very common name, and so always happy to hear from people on LinkedIn.
Cool. And I'll make sure to have the links in the notes and also on the website. So thank you so much. I think, this is a great conversation. And I think it's also to learn that there's a, great opportunity for self-improvement, right? And as you just said with the journey, right? Just because something didn't work out, or maybe it didn't take you to these expectations, do something else and then create that new journey.
Absolutely. And thanks for having me. I really enjoyed the conversation.
If you enjoy this podcast, maybe you'd like to hear more, please subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Be sure also to check out our website, mindtheinnovation.com. And remember, stay curious and keep learning.